Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Art of Slowing Down podcast. It is your host here, Analena. And today we're going to have another juicy solo episode. So there's a question that has been coming up, which I think is probably something that you may be wondering about yourself. So if you have been following me along, you know that I myself have been on this journey of human design for many, many years. And the most part I've spent with my tropical chart and more recently with the true sidereal, also called cosmic version of my human design chart, which is basically just using a different kind of astrology, which is true sidereal astrology, where we're actually using the constellations that are actually in the sky. And at this point where I'm at, this just resonates much deeper with me. And I still resonate a lot with both of my charts. And for those of you that don't know all of my story, I'm going to do a little bit of a recap. So in my tropical human design chart, I am a 2-4 manifesting generator with sacral authority. And in my true sidereal human design chart, I am a 5-1 generator as well as sacral authority. And the question that I received over on Instagram is like, well, okay, in your case, it's a little bit easy, right? Because you are a sacral authority, yeah, a mani-gen, and then you're still a sacral authority, okay, a generator, but that's very similar. That's probably like easy. So in this case, the person, I believe, is a manifestor in tropical human design, and then they become a generator in true sidereal human design. And I have also seen examples, for example, you are a projector in tropical, and then you become a generator in true sidereal. So, I mean, obviously, there's lots of different scenarios. And I'm going to use one example today, which I think is going to hopefully help you guys a lot. If you also have something where you become a totally different type. And when I say totally different type, it's not just from a manager to a generator or generator type, right? But it's like a non-sacral type and then becoming a sacral type and totally different authority as well. Because I totally get it that this can be a little bit confusing, especially with what I have noticed how human design is being taught. And I have to say that I have developed my own way of seeing human design, right? And I even did a masterclass last year about, it was the beginning of this year, I think it was called The Art of Responding. And in this masterclass, I went over my understanding of human design that I feel every type is responding, not just the generator types. Because how I have learned how the universe works, how spiritual laws and how we manifest, and bringing also all these teachings that I have, followed along from Eckhart Tolle, from Gabby Bernstein, from Deepak Chopra. I mean, all these things, and they don't talk about human design at all, and this applies to all of us. So when I take all this wisdom and see what I have learned from human design, it became clear to me that yeah, we have different access points, and there is so much beauty that we learn from human design. There's so much beauty from the types that we learn. But what I have noticed is that we fall into these extremes and we tell ourselves, oh, I can only initiate if I'm a manifestor. I'm screwed if I'm a projector, for example. I cannot take action. And this is not true at all. Or even people feel very disempowered oftentimes if they're a generator and they feel like, oh, I can only take action again if I am a manifestor. And now they tell me like, oh, now I am a manifestor in my cosmic human design chart, and now I feel empowered and I finally can take action, right? So again, human design is an experiment. And if human design helps you to realize that, wow, I have been operating from my victim consciousness and I have been using human design to put myself into a box or keep playing small or keep hiding, then how amazing it is that this comes to the surface now and you realize, wow, I can do whatever I want. So human design is never ever here to limit you in any way or form. It's always here to empower you. And going back to this masterclass I did, I went over all of the different types and different characteristics in the chart, and I showed you how there are so many things that are overlapping and how we are all here to respond, how we all can initiate, how we all have a lot of the energy, especially from the projectors, where we let life invite us into things. That applies to all of us. We have to be so careful not to see this as like 5 separate entities with the human design types. And I want to remind you guys, I talked about this on another episode, that in the beginning of human design, there were no 5 types. This came later on. And there are people that were working with Ra very much in the beginning, and they really disagreed with this whole idea about the 5 types, you know? We are now here, we picked this up later, we learned this from somewhere, and I have been studying with Karen Parker. And I have to say, the way that she has taught me human design, I never saw this separation with the 5 types. I saw the overlap. And I think I thought that that's common sense, or that's, you know, how everybody will understand it. But I have noticed over time that's not how it is at all. And many, many, many people see actually their own being as a disadvantage or less than others when they see it compared to somebody else's human design. And that's exactly what human design is not here for at all. One of the things as well, I have been looking deeper into Kabbalah over the last few months, and Kabbalah is also one of the principles that goes into human design. It's in the tree of life and the channels in human design, and it's not much talked about. But one of the teachings in Kabbalah, I was actually just listening to this yesterday, is that in the shadow, right, when we are separated from the light in some way, we are in this like, oh, I'm better than somebody else, or I feel less than. And usually when we feel better than somebody else, we feel like, oh, we're on top of the world, right? But it's about feeling one with everyone. And if your human design leads to any of this, I feel less than, or I feel better than another one, it's actually more putting us into a shadow consciousness or victim consciousness, right? Human design is here to wake us up. And sometimes we have to go into the shadow consciousness to realize that. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm actually using this in a way that it wasn't meant to be, right? So there's just a little bit of a recap here. If you're interested in that masterclass set of responding, I'm going to make sure to put the link in the show notes. And now I'm going to show you 2 charts. And for those of you just listening, it's going to be one, a chart of a splenic manifestor, and then a chart of an emotional generator. And I'm going to talk about, okay, what do I do now? I mean, in tropical, I'm a splenic manifestor. In True Ideal Human Design, I'm an emotional generator. This is darn confusing. I don't know what to do with that. Okay, so again, we have here on the left the 4-6 splenic manifestor. And the way you can see this is the sacral center is undefined, right? It's white. And then there's a motor center in this case. The ego center is connected directly to the throat. So this is a manifest. And then on the right side, we have an emotional generator where the solar plexus is defined as well as the sacral center is defined. And this, I think, can be a little bit difficult to synthesize for people because in human design, we have this segregation, the sacral types and the non-sacral types. And what I have seen or noticed is that there is this little bit of a misconception that non-sacral types like the manifestor, they don't have much energy, right? Or you have energy for a very short period of time, and then you have to make sure you rest a lot. And it's not really designed for the 9-to-5 world. Also, when we have the projector, we talk a lot about it. And that self-care, right, is very important. And this does not mean that for a sacral type, a generator, self-care is not important. This does not mean that a generator has 24/7 energy, right? There's actually a lot of generators that feel burned out because they have been doing something that wasn't aligned for them for such a long time. So what I want to invite you into is that for me, we learn through the open centers, through the undefined centers, about the energy of a center itself. So if you look at the sacral center, the sacral, again, when it's undefined, like in this case for the manifestor, it reflects back the health of the defined sacral center in some way, right? And it can amplify this energy. So if a manifestor is around a generator, they can amplify this life workforce energy, and it can feel very strong. It can feel amplified in some way where you feel like you are on top of the world, you get all these things done, right? But then at some point, this is a big thing for especially the undefined sacral, is that, okay, I need to know when enough is enough, right? Because if you push through and think that you're going to keep having this level of energy because it probably feels really good, then you may very quickly burn out because you're pushing and pushing and pushing, and you need to rest, right? And so there is always this reminder for the undefined sacral, like, hey, you have to rest, right? And you don't push through. Now, for a generator, when we talk about it in human design, it's that we say you have consistent access to this life force energy. But again, this does not mean you have 24/7 access to the sacral energy. Generators also, because the motor center, the sacral is a motor center itself, it has on and off cycles, right? And in this case here, this person has also emotional authority, the generator. And when the emotional wave is low and the person needs to withdraw, the sacral will also be turned off in some way, and the person will need rest. There's also something going on for every human, especially for women with the moon cycle, right? Where there are phases where there's not much action time going on, right? Where it's like, oh, it's not divine timing to take certain action, and there will be less intense time for generators as well. And I have found myself being a generator that I have phases where I feel I'm getting a lot done. I'm very productive. And there are other phases I need to rest more. Now, is this as defined as it is for a manifestor? I don't know. I'm not a manifestor myself, but I have learned that through the teachings of the projector, the manifestor, and the reflector, even for me as a generator, I feel that sometimes myself as well, I have very amplified energy where it's really on, where it's really strong. And I could say, oh, this is now also because, the pulse of my root center is on, or now the will center is on in that sense, because we don't only have one motor center in the chart, right? The sacral center is one of the motor centers, and every motor center in the chart has like an on and an off cycle, if that makes sense. So I think we have come to a place where we think that only the sacral is like that. And if you have the sacral defined, you all the time have energy. If you have the sacral undefined, you don't have energy, or just very extreme and then not at all. And that's taking it to the extreme, right? The root center also has an on and off. It's the center for divine timing. So when the pulse is on, it's time to to take action. And if you have it defined, it will be easier for you to tune into the pulse of the root because it's defined. However, a person with an undefined root center like here, they learn this through others to tune into the divine timing, right? When the pulse is on and off. It doesn't mean they don't have it. It's just that the way that they access it and they learn it is more through their environment. But at the end of the day, we all are connected to divine timing, right? So for me, it's more like, okay, through the root center, if it's defined or undefined, I have come to learn that we have this pulse of divine timing. And when the pulse is on, it's go time, you will feel this. Then you will also, if you're a manifestor in this case and it's undefined, you will have access to an enormous amount of sacral energy so that it can support the on pulse from the root center. And most likely at that same time, your will center, your self-worth and everything will also be aligned with that. So everything in the chart is flowing in a way to support that you can take action at this time, right? And then it may be, okay, now the pulse is off, and then the sacral energy is also, at a point where it needs to rest, but it's all synchronized in the chart with it. Like all these centers, they play together in a unique way, right? And so it could be that for a generator now in this case, you have the sacral defined, right? And again, we think, oh, we have access to energy all the time, but it may be right now your emotional wave is in this, like this, in this case is the 59.6 wave. Like It's all about needing alone time and then being with people and withdrawing and again going out again, this on and off or push-pull cycle a little bit. And when you feel like you need to totally withdraw and be by yourself, you probably are more in a state of resting and not using up all this sacral energy, right? Or it could be you want to be away from people and you love to work on something, could be as well, right? And this will then also depend if you feel this pulse from the root of like, now is go time or it's not go time, right? So the other thing where you may be really wondering, okay, I'm a splenic manifestor in tropical, so the spleen is defined. Here we learn, okay, spleen is, you know in the now, right? The intuition, and you just go take action. So splenic manifestor is probably one of the quickest decision-making, types in that sense. But again, we need to look at the whole chart. You can be a splenic manifestor and only have 3 centers defined, like the root, the spleen, and the throat. Or, and like in this case, this would be a splenic manifestor with a triple split. And anybody that has a triple split, it's going to slow you really down with making decisions, right? So, but again, if you have splenic authority, you may have this idea, oh, I can just go take action in the now, I do it. And now you find out, okay, now I'm an emotional generator and I have to wait to respond. I have to write out my emotional life. It's totally different. But let's think about it. Even if you're a splenic manifestor, you have an undefined solar plexus. And what I have learned with the undefined solar plexus, and this is right now, by the way, for any type, if talking about the solar plexus, you can follow along here. Just because you have an undefined solar plexus does not mean you should make big decisions when you feel emotionally really amplified or low. I have learned this through the teachings of human design about the defined solar plexus, that when you feel in an emotional hyped up kind of state where it's like, oh my God, I need to do this, right? In the moment, really like amplified emotional energy. Or if you feel low, like melancholic and off, don't ever make big decisions, especially financial decisions. And I have to say, I have a completely open solar plexus and an undefined so in tropical and true sidereal, I have an undefined solar plexus. And I need to wait things out. I sleep on things. It can sometimes take me a week because I can actually, with the undefined, or if you have an undefined solar plexus, you can take on, emotions, excitement, or even melancholy from other people as well. And you also don't ever want to make a decision based on that. You want to make sure you get out of this energy. You really want to make sure you tune into what feels right in your body. And when you're then in a clear space, you make that decision. And again, I have learned this through what human design teaches about the defined solar plexus. It really has helped me to learn about the emotional energy. And you may be right now a little bit like, okay, I don't get it. I'm confused. I thought we just have to wait to make decision with a defined solar plexus. But again, I just told you from my experience, and I have spoken to many, many, many people by now, because again, remember, this is an experiment. And I find that we all have access to intuition, right? For a splenic manifestor, it may be easier for them to connect to the intuition. Or if you have a defined spleen, it may be easier for you. But it doesn't mean if somebody like in this chart has an undefined spleen that they don't have intuition or they don't have access to intuition, right? Or that they never make a decision in the moment. For intuition is actually always for little things and the day-to-day stuff, right? Where you have, let's say, you're doing something and all of a sudden you have this intuitive fit to go to the grocery store. You could have a defined or undefined spleen or splenic authority or not. The secret for all of us is like the more we can get out of our head and more into the body, you will feel that. And it's about, are you trusting that? Or are you stuck in the head and trying to talk yourself out of it, right? Or are we being so distracted and busy all the time that we're not even noticing these subtle voices that are coming from our spleen, this inner knowing that we have, right? Where it's not especially like a fear-based kind of thing, because the spleen also obviously has a lot of fears, right? Where sometimes we actually, you have this inner knowing to do something, but then the fear kicks in and tries to talk you out of it. So it could be that using this podcast episode right now, that I was like, okay, I have this inner knowing. I literally gonna explain this to you guys, closing my eyes right now. So this came to me, right? Somebody on social media made this comment, and so I responded. I already had the idea before. Let me talk more about this. And I was like, yeah, let me do this. Let me talk about this. This makes so much sense. I think I can really help people to talk about the difference from going from a manifestor to a generator, right? And then a day later now, or 2 days later, I'm here sitting, being back at home, and I was like, now is the time to do this. And I really felt like my pulse was on. Now is time for me to go record the podcast episode. I could have gotten into my head, and I'm telling you, there was a part of me like, maybe not. I still have something else recorded. But I felt so in the flow of it, and intuitively, it felt so right for me to talk about this. But there's a voice in my head like, well, what if this is going to confuse people? What if I don't know what to say? That's then when the fear from the spleen kicks in. And again, we all have that. It's just that it tends to be when people have this defined, we are more aware of these fears. They're more there consistently, right? And we may access our intuition in a more consistent way. And if it's undefined, then we learn this more through others, right? And if you now have in your tropical chart a defined spleen, and then in the true sidereal chart you have an undefined spleen, what I find is that the realization for you, because before you may have been more in tune with your intuition, you trusted it more because you see, oh, I have a defined spleen, and now you have an undefined spleen. And I would be curious, I'm asking you like, wow, now maybe the undefined spleen is not such a big deal for you anymore, because before you identified with a defined spleen and you're like, yeah, I have consistent access to my intuition, right? So see it as an advantage that you have evolved, and maybe now, because the true sidereal chart has come into your life with an undefined spleen, that you see this more as a gift, right? That you can also feel other people's sense of well-being, right? You can pick up how other people feel in some way. And you're not in the shadow of an undefined spleen, which would be where the fears take over, right? You let it hold back and you're not listening to your intuition. But again, that can also happen to somebody with a defined spleen. But with an undefined center, you may be more susceptible to it, right? So in essence, an undefined center accesses the energy in greater variability. And so over time, we learn this energy. But the essence of the center stays the same. Yeah. So with the undefined sacral going to a defined sacral, it's actually a beautiful thing, because you learn through the undefined sacral of the manifestor that, wow, I really have to be careful not to push through too much, right? I really have to be careful to take rest when my body really needs to rest, right? And so you have made self-care a priority. And I don't want you now to think that, okay, because now I'm an emotional generator, I'm going to throw this out the window. I'm not going to do self-care anymore. I'm not going to listen to when I need to rest anymore. Please continue doing that, because the generator also needs to rest. So in this chart here, for example, there's this gate 29. Gate 29 is about devotion, and gate 29 in the shadow is an energy where we can push through too much. We can overcommit. We can overpush and do it's almost the energy of an Olympic athlete. And when we continue overdoing it, we can actually disform our physical body and create harm to the physical body, right? If we don't listen to our natural need to rest. And I have to tell you, as a generator type, if I would just have learned about being a generator or manifesting generator I would not have gotten the message that it's also very important for me to rest, right? So for me, in my tropical chart, I have a defined will center, and the defined will center helped me, Analena, to realize, wow, I need to have rest on a consistent basis, because the will center is also a center that actually needs consistent rest, especially when it's defined. So, but then also if you have it undefined, because from a place of a lack of self-worth, we can push through a lot and we can also get burned out, right? So all of these motor centers, which is, again, is the will center, the emotional solar plexus, the sacral center, and the root center, they are motors in the sense that they're on and off at certain points, right? And when you can find your unique dance, and this happens from listening to your body, it's a very unique experience. And this is also why I think I have said this so many times, that, you know, if in a very, very simplified way, human design is just here to help you trust yourself. Human design is teaching us to get out of the head, to get into the body, and follow that, what the body is telling us, not what the head is trying to conceptualize and or rationalize. And then, you know, oh, this makes sense. I analyzed this. I made my pro and contra list. This is what I should do. You know, because then we are in using the mind in a way it's not designed to be used, right? The mind is here to, of course, what I'm doing right now, to analyze and, yes, conceptualize things, but not to make decisions, right? That's the big thing. As long as you're not taking the mind to override how you feel in the body, and then instead use the mind to, oh, but this makes more sense, even though it doesn't feel right in my body. That's usually when we make decisions where we learn in hindsight, like, well, I should have listened to my gut, right? And look, there's so many people out there that they have never heard about human design, or they're not using human design, and they may never need to. And and nobody needs it really, but because they just trust themselves. You know, if human design helps you to trust yourself, it has done its job, in my opinion. And I find, I mean, there are so many beautiful ways that empower us, and also these 64 gates we have in the human design chart. It's so beautiful. And if now, again, going from a 4-6 splenic manifestor to an emotional generator, you're going to have probably all these different gates in your chart, right? And maybe it's just because some of these gates, these energies are more relevant for where you're at in your life right now. So don't even overthink so much about the type with that, right? And another thing that just comes to me, which you may ask, okay, but as a manifestor, I have this more, I think it's always talked about, because I don't talk honestly much about the auras, like it's a more repellent aura, or a very, very strong aura, right? And the generator is a more open, receptive aura. So I think we can also really misunderstand it. And I want to just say something here. So in this chart that I have up here, the generator is one gate away from being actually, well, in this case, a manifesting generator. Because if gate 45 would be defined, then the will center would be also defined to the throat, and it would be manifesting generator. But then also and let's play this game right now, if gate 59 would not be defined in this case, so if there would be two gates different, you know, gate 59 would not be defined, it would be an undefined sacral, and gate 45 would be defined, all of a sudden we would have either a projector or a manifestor here, just one gate. So then all of a sudden the entire aura of the person changes. I wonder. I'm actually questioning that. Because the more I have understood how the human design chart comes about from the transits and what gates are activated in the sky, and especially with the moon, a human design chart can change in 2 minutes, especially like when it's just one gate away from being a different type. And then also let's think about, once you connect with other people as a manifestor, you may have the sacral defined. Does this impact your aura? It's an experiment to have. And if I ask myself, okay, what does it mean to have more, well, we have this repelling aura, which I don't even like that word. I think it's actually awful. And more receptive or inviting aura, right? It's like, oh yeah, generators, like they are friendly, they are nice, and they're just calling in everything. And as a manifester, it's a more, yeah, strong, like everybody go away so I can do my thing kind of energy if I tune into that. And I feel like we are all a blend of everything, right? Because when I am Elena and I'm not a manifester in my chart, you know, even though I have to say this is a derivative of my chart, if I'm just using like half a degree more than what is in the cosmic human design, I actually become a splenic manifester. So this also has given me those insights of like how easily our chart can change. So, I can have phases where I have this creative urge come through me, because that's how we talk about the manifestor, right? You have these creative urges and you got to take action, you inform, so there's not so much resistance all around you. I have that too. If I just go do the thing and I'm not letting my daughter know or my partner, they may feel like totally left out and there may be a lot of resistance come up. I have learned that through the manifestor archetype. I call it archetype by now because there's so much overlaps. And I feel like informing is something that is so helpful for everyone. I think that's one of the most important relationship skills, actually. And if I don't inform and, I just like have this creative urge and I want to force it, like I may also come across in more like a repetitive way, And I have to tell you, I have met so many manifestors where I felt such an inviting and receptive energy. So I want to say you can also have a very beautiful, open, receptive, inviting energy as a manifestor. Why not? And maybe now cosmic human design came into your life to remind you that you get to be both. Because it could also be in another example that you are a generator in tropical human design and now you become a manifestor. I think I actually had somebody mention that to me and they told me that, wow, now I feel finally ready to take action. So they had the story that as a generator, they have to wait to respond. And oftentimes the way to respond is misunderstood, that you think you have to wait for other people to give you permission to do something. That's BS. That's not what this is at all, right? And I have talked also about how there's different kind of gates in the chart. They are all about taking action and starting things, right? Like gate 54, for example, I'm taking this from the emotional generator chart here right now, and an undefined root. Gate 54 is about ambition. It's about drive. It's about taking action. And this person here has this in their Mars, and Mars is about taking action, So this is another thing, because I've been studying astrology a lot. So the planets, I mean, everybody has Mars somewhere in their chart. So look at where's your Mars. Mars is about taking action, being assertive, and all of that. And you all have that in the chart. So we all can take action. It's probably in a different way with a different flavor and all of that. But it's not that only a manifester can take action. And then we have this very sad scenario, which I've seen many, many times, which I think is all shadow consciousness, in my opinion, that, okay, we have the manifestors and they take action, they tell people what to do, and then all the generators are the work bees and they do everything, and there's so many generators, they are so broken inside because they feel like, oh, I just have to do the work for everybody else, and they feel so disempowered, right? And again, this is all about creating separation. This is all about creating hierarchy. And I think we have a lot of that still in what we see in human design today. And I'm very, very passionate about helping you guys understand that that's not what human design is about. So anytime where it creates this feeling less or more than other people, or separation, or I can't do something because of this, it is feeding our shadow consciousness. But it's good because it helps us be aware of it so we can wake up. We can be like, "Ooh, hold on, hold on. Actually, while this is so amazing, I am realizing that I over-identified with this so much that I felt superior to others, or I identified with this so much that I felt like I can't do this because I have to wait for other people's mercy or other people's permission, because in a way we misunderstood it, right? Because again, every chart like is equal. No chart is better than the other. We all have access to energy when we need it. And we all feel emotions. And please don't blame people with emotional authority. Oh, this is not mine, and I need to get away from this. Like, no, we all feel emotions, and however we are designed is perfect and beautiful, right? For me, again, I have learned how emotions work through the description of the emotional solar plexus, right? And now taking it further, for those of you that are also into the gene keys, remember in the gene keys, we have no 5 types. We don't have any auras, and it works very beautiful, right? And in the end, Richard Rudd always emphasizes in the Pearl sequence, well, the biggest joke of all is that we have all of the 64 gene keys. So all of these 64 gates, they are relevant to us, yeah? And still, the human design chart has such a powerful story. And I see this all the time in readings when I tune into a chart intuitively. And there is a story. There are certain energies that are here to talk to you. They help you see something. They help open up something for you. They're here to activate something in you, right? And that can change over time. That's why I want to tell everyone that where you find yourself right now being drawn to the true sidereal or cosmic human design chart version of you, it's just another layer. It's just another access point for you. You can be both. Use what resonates and really leave the rest. And it's just, think about it, it's a different access point, right? If the sun gate in your tropical chart, so in this case, I have here gate 38, right? Maybe that was super powerful, eye-opening, brought so much magic into your life, probably brought up a lot of shadows as well for some time. And now all of a sudden, this true sidereal chart came into your life. And you're like, wow, now gate 14 has a special message for you, right? So, and also think about the transits. Every year, the sun transits through all 64 gates. So does the earth. The moon transits through all 64 gates over the course of 29 days. And so we get to taste all these energies. And with that, I know we say our human design charts don't change, but we still take on these trends. Like, we are fluid, ever-changing, evolving beings, you know? And also want to remind you guys that in astrology, we have so many different ways to look at astrology, right? We have the Vedic, we have we have Western and Eastern, we have the sidereal, we have now the true sidereal, we have the tropical. There are all these different ways. And I think in astrology, it's kind of okay for us, so it's not such a big deal. But in human design, it becomes such a big deal because it does change the type so much. So for me, and the way that I have been teaching human design now for a while, from my own experience, experiment, and working with so many amazing humans, I find the biggest resonance now when I actually look at a chart without over going into the details of the type. I look more just as the chart as a whole. And again, this is how human design was actually used in the very beginning. And maybe the whole things with the types, while I still think there has a lot of value in it, but only if we can see the characteristics of all the types, then you're always going to be a blend of all of it. Then maybe that, so for this example again that I have, that for this person, the manifestor archetype was more relevant for some years, and for some reason where they're at in their life, maybe you have been initiating too much, maybe you have been pushing too much, whatever, right? And maybe you have been resting too much. We can always fall into extremes, right? Maybe now life is asking you to tap into a more feminine, receptive way through the generator aura, right? Through more of the responding. And you can still initiate, but maybe now life is asking you to respond more. And if you were a generator before and now a manifestor in the cosmic or true cellular human design, maybe it's because those stories that I have heard that it's time to take action. It's time to get things started because you have been too much in the extreme of like just waiting and waiting and maybe not even taking action on the responding because the fear of the spleen has held you back, right? Or you had the story unknowingly that you felt disempowered because you felt like you cannot take action, even though that's not true, right? So yeah, there are so many, I think, beautiful things that we can extract from that. This definitely requires a very open mindset, very expansive view, and understanding that we are not black and white as humans, right? So it's not like, oh, you're good or bad. I mean, yeah, we have those terms, good or bad. But if you think about good and bad, for example, however you define it, there is a spectrum. You can be like a little bit good and super bad, or you can be super good and a little bit bad, right? It's like a thermostat, if you think about it. Yeah, we have freezing and we have hot. But on that, we have so many different like degrees where we can be, and we can move and we can shift. And it's the same with the human design. It's like, it's not like, okay, we have a manifestor, we have a generator, we have a manigen, and we have a reflector, and we have a projector, and you can only be one. No, you are also always a blend of everything, right? And there may be times where you feel like more hot, or you're more like I'm in the manifestor, and then you may feel more like a reflector, and then you may feel more like a generator, or in general, you feel much more like a generator, right? Depending where your body takes you in your human design experiment. And I want to say something like there may be people that will never feel the pull in their body to look at any other chart than their tropical chart. And that's okay. I talked about this before. If you find yourself really drawn to the true ideal, especially if it triggers you, I think that's excellent. Anytime something triggers me or there's something in it for me. Always ask, what is the gift for me? What am I here to learn? Right? What have I maybe not seen in my tropical chart? And I think especially what the cosmic or true ideal human design is brilliant for is to wake you up to perhaps realizing that you did put yourself in a box with a couple of things, that you did limit yourself, that you did tell yourself a disempowering story, or a story of like feeling superior to everyone else, right? Where we saw ourselves so like separated from everything. So I think this is what I wanted to share today. This is what came through, at least for me. And obviously, there's probably so much more. You may have more questions. And please, if you do, feel free to send me a message on Instagram, send me an email. I would really love to hear. What is your experience? What are the questions that are coming up for you? Where are you confused? Where are you upset? What do you love? Right? I want to hear it all. And this is really what human design is about, right? That it brings us back home to who we really are, to really wake us up. I mean, Ra had gate 51 in his conscious sun in the tropical version, right? And gate 51 is about shock. It's about awakening. It's about initiation, right? And again, this energy is for all of us. Maybe this whole human design is here to wake us up, to see how easily we can just believe things, to how easily we can just put ourselves in the box and live in a conditioned state, and to really break free from that and allow ourselves to be all of that. Because if you just learn the energetics of the centers in human design, the gates and the channels, it's the most darn beautiful thing has come into my life, because it has so much wisdom. It has the wisdom of the spiritual energetic laws of the universe. It brings in the wisdom of Kabbalah. It brings in the wisdom of quantum physics. And also what we have in the gene keys, right? Because the gene keys are a more in-depth extended version of the 64 gates, which goes back to the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. And when you really understand a human design chart, I'm going to really say it again, you don't even have to talk much about the type, in my opinion. Now, saying something else, and I said it before, yes, the types have so much value. For example, the manifesting generator gives people permission to be multi-passionate. But again, please don't think if you're not a Mani-Gen that you cannot be multi-passionate. So I understand that some people that may be very new to human design, this may be confusing, but if this episode found you, it found you for a reason. So welcome to my world. And I want to thank everyone for being here and for listening and for your curiosity. And as always, I'm very excited to be with you all on the next episodes.